I'm 78 years old and I did everything right. Everything they told me to do, I did. I got the degree, I got the job, I showed up early and stayed late. I saved for retirement, I paid off the house. I put my kids through college, I never gambled, never drank too much, never made... I followed every rule they ever gave me. And you know what it gave me. A quiet house. A pension that covers the bills. A body that's wearing out. And the slow, creeping realization that I traded my one life for a checklist someone else wrote. I'm not saying this for sympathy. I'm saying it because I wish someone had sat me down 50 years ago and asked me a simple question. Whose life are you living? Because I would have said mine. I would have been sure of it. And I would have been wrong. Let me take you back. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My father worked at a factory. My mother stayed home. We weren't poor, but we weren't comfortable either. I remember my father coming home tired every night, his hands rough, his back already starting to curve by the time he was 40. He used to say the same thing to me over and over. Get an education. Get a good job. Don't end up like me. He wasn't bitter when he said it. He was scared. Scared that I'd struggle the way he did. Scared that I wouldn't have security. So I listened. I was a good student. Not brilliant, but consistent. I didn't cause trouble. I didn't question authority. I did my homework, studied for tests, raised my hand when I knew the answer, and stayed quiet when I didn't. I got into a decent college. Studied accounting. Not because I loved it, but because people said it was stable. You'll always find work, they said. You'll always be needed. They were right. I always found work. But I never found myself. I graduated in 1968. Got a job at a firm downtown. Started at the bottom, like everyone does. I wore a tie every day, ate lunch at my desk, took the same train home every night. I met Susan in 1971. She was a secretary at a law office in the same building. We had coffee a few times, then dinner. A year later, we were engaged. I didn't ask myself if I was in love. I asked myself if it made sense. She was kind. She was stable. She wanted the same things I did. A house, a family, a predictable future. We got married in the spring of 1972. I was 26. Looking back, I don't think I ever made a decision based on what I wanted. I made decisions based on what I was supposed to want. A house in the suburbs. I bought it because that's what young couples did. Children. We had two, a boy and a girl, because that's what families look like. Promotions. I chased them because that's what success meant. I wasn't unhappy. That's the strange part. I wasn't miserable. I was just absent. Going through the motions of a life I'd copied from a template. I remember one night, I was maybe 35. The kids were asleep. Susan was reading in bed. I stood at the window of our living room, looking out at the street, and I felt this strange emptiness, like I was watching my own life from outside of it. I thought, is this it? Is this what I've been working for? The house, the car, the job, the schedule. All of it suddenly felt like scenery, like I was an actor in a play I hadn't auditioned for. But I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I went to bed. I woke up the next morning. I took the train to work. And I did that for another 30 years. Here's what the rules don't tell you. They don't tell you that stability can become a trap. That doing the right thing can slowly erase you. That you can succeed by every measure and still feel like a stranger in your own life. I hit every milestone. I got the promotions. I maxed out my retirement contributions. I put both kids through college without debt. I paid off the house 5 years early. And every time I reached one of those markers, I thought I would feel something. Relief, satisfaction, pride. But I didn't. I just looked ahead to the next one. There was always another goal, another box to check, another rule to follow. I retired at 65. The day I walked out of that office for the last time, people shook my hand. They gave me a watch. They said nice things about my years of service. I drove home and sat in my driveway for 20 minutes. I didn't know what to do next. For 41 years, someone else had structured my days. Meetings, deadlines, reports. And suddenly it was just me, sitting in silence, realizing I had never learned how to live without instructions. Susan and I had a good marriage. I want to be clear about that. She was a good woman. We raised our children together. We didn't fight much. We didn't hurt each other. But we also didn't really know each other. We knew each other's schedules. We knew how we took our coffee. We knew which side of the bed we slept on and who paid which bills. But I couldn't tell you what her dreams were. I couldn't tell you what she was afraid of. I never asked. And she never asked me either. We were partners in logistics, not in life. She passed away 4 years ago. A stroke, sudden and quick. She was there one morning, and by evening she was gone. At the funeral, people said we had a beautiful life together. 51 years. A lovely family. A real partnership. And I nodded. I thanked them. I played the role of the grieving husband. But inside, I felt something I didn't expect. I felt regret. Not for the years we had, but for the years we didn't really use. All those nights we sat in the same room, watching television, not talking. All those conversations where we followed itineraries instead of wandering. All those conversations we could have but didn't, because we were too comfortable in the silence. We followed the rules of marriage. But we forgot to actually be married. My children are good people. They have families of their own now. They call on holidays. They visit when they can. But we're not close. I think they see me as a provider, a stable presence, the man who paid for things and showed up when it mattered. But they don't see me, because I never showed them who I was. I never told them about the dreams I gave up. The summer I almost moved to Colorado before I met Susan. The book I wanted to write but never started. The parts of me that didn't fit the mold. I gave them the version of me that followed the rules. And now that's all they know. Last year I went through some old boxes in the basement. I found a notebook from when I was 22. Before the job, before Susan, before any of it. There was a list inside. Things I wanted to do. Learn to fly a plane. Visit Japan. Start a business. Write something meaningful. Live near the ocean. I hadn't looked at that list in over 50 years. I sat on the basement floor and read it 3 times. Not one thing on that list ever happened. Not one. I followed all the rules. And the rules led me in a straight line, away from everything I actually wanted. I'm not saying structure is bad. I'm not saying responsibility is a mistake. But somewhere along the way, I confused obedience with wisdom. I thought that if I just did what was expected, life would reward me. It did reward me. With safety. With predictability. With a life that looked good from the outside. But it didn't give me meaning. It didn't give me passion. It didn't give me the feeling that I was really here, really alive, really myself. It gave me a long, quiet existence. And now I sit in this house alone, wondering who I might have been if I hadn't been so careful. I'm 78 years old. My knees don't work like they used to. My memory slips sometimes. I get tired by mid-afternoon, but I still have a little time. And I've started doing something strange. I've started breaking the rules. Small things. Silly things, maybe. I ate dessert for breakfast last Tuesday. I drove to a town I'd never been to, just to walk around. I told my son something honest on the phone. Something real about how I felt, and he didn't know how to respond. I signed up for a writing class at the community center. I'm the oldest one there. The teacher is younger than my granddaughter. But I sit there with my notebook and I try to put words on a page. It's not much. It's not enough. But it's mine. If you're listening to this and you're still young, or younger than me at least, I want to tell you something. The rules are not a life. They're a framework. A suggestion. Sometimes they're useful. Sometimes they keep you safe, but they're not sacred. And they're not yours. You're allowed to want things that don't make sense on paper. You're allowed to take risks that might not pay off. You're allowed to fail, to wander, to change your mind. You're allowed to ask yourself, what do I actually want? Not what should I want? Not what would make sense? Not what would people think? What do I want? I never asked that question. Not really. Not honestly. And now I'm asking it at 78. In a quiet house, with a list I never finished, and a life I only half lived. Don't wait until the rules are the only thing you have left. They won't keep you warm. They won't call you on your birthday. They won't sit beside you at the end and tell you it was all worth it. Only you can know that. And you'll only know it if you actually live. I followed all the rules for 50 years. And here's what it gave me. A checklist with every box ticked, and a heart that's still wondering what it missed. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm just awake now. Finally. And I hope you don't wait as long as I did.